Dragons. They are arguably the most iconic and popular creatures in all of fantasy. They feature prominently in Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, The Witcher, The Never-Ending Story, and within the world of anime, classics like Spirited Away and Dragon Ball. Whenever one appears on screen, it immediately raises the stakes and tension, and you know that an amazing fight is often about to go down. So when Frieren Beyond Journey's End introduced a solar dragon in episode 5, I was excited to see how one of the most powerful mages to have ever lived would deal with the creature. Spoiler alert, she didn't.
フリーレン様、あまり手応えが。やっぱり竜は硬いね。仕方がない。逃げるよ。
Frieren is a series that loves to toy with and subvert tropes. The story is heavily inspired by adventure-based fantasy like Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons. But it does something unique by setting its plot decades after Frieren's mission to save the world has ended. It's a post-adventure story that bypasses the typical plot that most fantasy shows would focus on, and instead examines the physical and emotional aftermath of that quest. Many of the characters are designed to dissect their own archetypes, and the show uses the conventions and tropes of anime against the audience. So when Frieren and Fern ran away from the dragon, I shouldn't have been too surprised. But what happened after that did shock me, and it's exactly why I think the series is so good. To understand why the dragon in Frieren is so unique, we first have to look at why the fantasy genre is so obsessed with them. Before appearing in books and movies, dragons were part of real-world mythology and folklore. People believed in them, creating rituals to ward them off, or praying to them as deities. They may have come in different forms across different regions, like the Greek Hydra, the Scandinavian Lindworm, or the South Asian Naga, but the destructive capabilities and overall fears remained the same. There are many arguments as to why we are so obsessed with dragons. Some believe they are the purest manifestation of human creativity, a creature so grand in scale and destruction that it could only appear in fiction. The theory I subscribe to, and I thought about this a lot more than any grown man probably should, is that dragons personify humanity's obsession with mortality, power, and control. More often than not, dragons in fantasy are gigantic creatures that can breathe fire and level cities. Storytellers make them an objective for the protagonists to kill in order to save thousands of innocent lives or to retrieve a hoard of treasure. This trope came about because we have long viewed ourselves as the dominant species in the evolutionary food chain. We might not have claws or the ability to breathe fire. We've made up for that by building cities, developing agriculture, and creating weapons. The introduction of dragons in mythology was caused by humanity's fear of a more dominant creature existing. Years later, storytellers took dragons and made them a tool to examine and dissect humanity's struggle with its own mortality and strength. So how exactly does this apply to Frieren? Mortality is already a major theme in the series. At the start of episode 5, Frieren says that her decade-long adventure with Himmel's party was an insignificant fraction of her lifespan. Her nonchalant attitude towards the passing of time represents her perception of her own mortality compared with the humans around her. But moments later, Fern reveals that her time with Frieren has made up over half of her life. Throughout the series, Frieren is faced with the reality of humans living significantly shorter lives than elves, and learns to grieve her deceased friends and the time she has lost. The solar dragon in episodes 5 and 6 is an extension of this exploration. But in true Frieren fashion, it doesn't do things by the book. After running away from the dragon, Frieren and Fern decide to find a warrior to help them defeat it. This leads them to Stark, a young fighter who trained under Frieren's old companion, Eisen. Like any fantasy story involving dragons, Frieren asks how humans will react when faced with their own mortality. Knowing the fantasy genre and the archetype of brave warrior characters, we expect Stark to react like this. Instead, he looks like this. In episode 6, Stark reveals that the dragon didn't fly off because it was afraid of him. It simply stopped attacking because it got bored. Stark's reaction and the dragon's impulsive decision buy into the idea of dragons being the personification of our own mortality. What makes the dragon in Frieren so distinct isn't that it follows the convention or that it completely subverts it. It's that the series does both at the same time. From Stark's perspective, the dragon follows convention. It is the embodiment of his own mortality and the cause of his fear. By following the standard archetype of dragons in this way, it allows the series to establish Stark's complexity as a character. He isn't a fearless warrior. He's a warrior who fights even though he's scared, because it's the right thing to do. Just another way in which Frieren subverts the tropes of the genre. But Frieren's revelation later in the episode also flips the script on Stark and the dragon. When Stark attempted to save the villagers, the dragon didn't stop attacking because it got bored. It was equally afraid of Stark. It's a cool twist, one that a lot of anime would use as an aura moment for the main character. So why is this moment in Frieren so different? The genius of this decision is that it emphasises the concept of dragons embodying our fear of death, by subverting the trope. When storytellers use that trope, they typically examine it from the human perspective. We understand Stark's fears about fighting the dragon, a creature that he perceives to be much higher up the food chain than he is. But in a creative decision, which is as much a nod to Frieren's rich world building as it is its subversive story, the series understands that dragons, now being the dominant species, would likely hold the same fear. This often forgotten notion is presented through the dragon's mirrored fear of Stark. While the highlight of the episode is undoubtedly the fight between the two, the implication of the dragon both conveying and subverting the idea of humanity's mortality is one of the things that makes Frieren so great. It's a tiny decision that many would overlook, or you may even write off as me overthinking and overanalyzing the series. But that tiny decision adds so many layers to the characters, the world building, and the well-worn foundations of the fantasy genre. It goes to show that even the simplest creative choices, when executed well, can have resounding effects on a story. There are countless minor details in Frieren that have a similar effect on the series, like the divisive storyline involving demons, and the way Frieren subverts the notion of straightforward villains. I'll definitely be analysing some more of these in future videos, but there are also many other anime that I'd love to dig into. If you'd like to see more videos like this, why not check out my deep dive into anime sound design? And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I know every YouTuber in the history of this platform says it, but it really does help out the channel. Thank you.